this episode of Unfinished Thursday. Today I'm going to start with a page that I'd already started that I didn't have any video footage for, and I'm going to finish it. So this is how I started the project, just as a quick kind of replay. So first I took out my art journal. Then I found myself some ukulele music and ripped it all up. Then I found a napkin and ripped it all up into the different flowers and segments and so on. Then I grabbed some pages from an ancient Jane Austen of Sense and Sensibility and ripped those up. And then I took my golden matte medium and my paintbrush and I collaged them down onto the page of my journal. The next step that I took was I took this little swallow stencil that I believe is potentially from Crafter's Workshop, and I drew it bigger onto a piece of paper with a pencil to create a bigger stencil of the bird and outlined it with my pencil. And then I took my gesso and the paintbrush again and whited out the space around the shapes of the sparrows. So as you see, it's all about layers. Please enjoy how I finish today's Unfinished Thursday project. So here's the canvas the page that I ended up with in my art journal, and I love it just the way it is, and that's kind of why it stayed how it was for so long. But I decided it was time to finish it off. So this stamp is from Stampers Anonymous, and it's from the Tim Holtz collection. And I put it on the block. I know I never use a block really for mixed media unless it's a small stamp and I get my fingers in the way. And I should have remembered that with this one. But it stamped so much nicer once I took that block off that I was really sad that it wasn't a totally clear stamp so that I could restamp the first one that I did. But that is what it is. Inconsistency is just fine. So the next step that I did is I grabbed my watercolor crayon, and this is the light blue from the Neocolor 2 collection. And I just did an overall color throughout the whole page and made sure I was a little bit consistent. But I'm really not being all that consistent. I'm just laying all the color in so that once I activate it, I can move it around with my water brush. And putting a little bit darker and putting in a little extra layer in and so forth all throughout this piece. And then I grabbed my damp or wet water brush and just mixed it, just activated it all and moved it around and got it to all come together and change the color of that page. So that's what it looks like, all activated and nice and smooth. And then after that, I'm going to start layering in all the different shades of blue over and over and over again. So this project, by the time that I was finished, I had about 2 hours worth of footage for it. So it did take a bit of time for me to add color, smooth the color, add more color, smooth the color, add color, realize I put it on too thick, and then have to wait for it to dry a little bit so that I could blend it a little bit more. And that's one of the nice things that I love the watercolor crayons for, is that you can come back and blend one even though you've already activated it with water. And it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because if your project ever gets wet, then you're really in trouble, you know, once you've finished it. But it really is a blessing when it comes to drawing it and starting it and creating your project. So there will be times when I've added too much of a color and I need it to just dry, and then I go in and soften the edge afterwards. And because these are water-based, or they will continue to move. If I was to use like an Inktense or something like that, once you've activated them, they're permanent. If I was to use a gelato, once it's been activated, it becomes a permanent to water anyways. And so going in here, adding too much color, blending, adding too much color, blending, it was just a process of going over and over and over again with the same spots. This, as you can see now that I've done that all around that bird, this is a darker blue, and this dark blue is called Ultramarine. And at this point, I did something weird where I was like, okay, I'm going to do the shadow. And then when I looked at it, I was like, I didn't do shadow at all. So then I thought, well, I'm not really at the point of shadow anyways. I needed to lay in this darker blue around the entire bird anyhow to emphasize the line work of the bird. So then I went back in, just made sure I went around all the birds, made sure there was a little bit of cohesion throughout the whole piece, and then went back in and added in the ultramarine to all of the birds. Anytime that I have a hard line, I'm just going to have a damp brush and I'm going to move it over that hard line in kind of a gentle, light-handed scrubbing motion just to blend in the hard line so that it doesn't stay that way. And then I'm just going to keep adding layer upon layer of the ultramarine blue until I'm happy with it. Once all the ultramarine blue is blended in the way that I'm happy with it, then I'm going to let it dry just a little bit. It won't appear that way with the video, but I do let it dry a little bit because I couldn't decide if I needed more of the ultramarine or if I wanted to go in with my next darkest color. So I let it sit. And because I loved the collage underneath these birds, when I put that giant bird on there and it had such a beautiful collage come out of it, I basically just sat there and stared at it and wanted to keep it like that. So finishing this project has taken me some time because the muse kept saying that less is more, and by the time that I'm finishing this project, I've gotten over the less is more, and I've gone through and created it so that it appeals to me all the time and not just when I'm in a funk. So here I am, I let the corner dry, and now I'm going in and blending in whatever hard lines that I have. And I'm doing that by going back to the light blue with a little bit of water and using the light blue as the blending color. So see how I have those hard lines in there? I want to soften them, so that's what I'm doing with the light blue. Nice and soft and smooth. It's not perfectly smooth because it is watercolor and because I was trying to give the effect of sky, but I did want there to be quite a bit of definition between the white papers on the white pages and the sky that I have going on here. Sky's not actually a solid color for the most part anyways. There's very few days in Canada where you will see just a beautiful solid blue sky. More than often than not there will be clouds or wind or something like that. Where I live, we don't really have to deal with a whole lot of smog or anything like that, just a lot of wind, which means a lot of clouds all the time. And so I just keep going through and I blend and blend and blend and blend, add a layer of color, blend it in, add a layer of color, blend it in, and I just keep going over the page until I'm satisfied with the way that the color flows. And I love how those white pages are starting to pop out. So the next color that I'm going to take is called Prussian Blue, and it's also a watercolor crayon. And this is now where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to create definition around the bird, and at the same time I'm going to do my shading. So I do have heavier line work on the lower right edges or line work of the bird so that I can create a little bit of a shadowed effect. Normally this shading concept comes quite easy to me, but today, or the day that I did this project, it really struggled with me, and I felt like I needed to just keep adding rings around the birds, rings of color, dark and light and dark and light and dark and light, and I couldn't figure out what was messing with my head in there. So it took a little bit of extra work to work the blue the way that I wanted it to be. And I'm not really sure why that was. I think that originally I had intended for the gesso underneath the blue, I had intended for that to be lighter so that you could actually see the collage that was underneath. I wanted it to be a little bit more transparent. And it ends up getting to the point where any part of the collage that was a piece of music, you can see the music notes shining through, but when it comes to those beautiful, beautiful roses and other flowers and the butterflies and all that stuff never really came through again. So here I just took a wet wipe and I wiped down all the birds to make sure that I would have a nice solid line by the time all was said and done. And I don't know that I showed it on camera, but I did go through with my wet wipe and wipe all of the open spaces of the birds and the pages of the book, like the little sheets that are sitting on the bottom there. I'm still trying to work that blue in a little bit. And once again, now I'm saying, okay, now shade. So the bottom right of everything. I really love these birds still, and I love the collage that was underneath. And this was a collage that I actually put quite a bit of thought into, which is uncommon for me. Usually I just kind of slap everything down. It creates a background, and then I go with whatever I see from that background. But this one I put a lot of thought into, going, okay, well, I want flowers here, and I want flowers there, and I want the music to be with the flowers, and I want this flower to look more cohesive. And so I actually did pay quite a bit of attention to this, to the collage that was under here. And so when I was looking at just the collage on its own, I was very sad to be thinking that, oh, I'm going to cover it with something now. And so when it came time to actually cover the collage, I was kind of bummed out about it. And I think that that's why the muse left. I think that when you love something and then you cover it up, you tend to lose your inspiration for maybe a few minutes or maybe a few days. But if you leave it, you allow yourself to walk away, then it's much easier to come back and say, okay, now it needs this. And then you can walk away again and then come back another time and say, okay, now it needs this. So allowing your muse to walk away so that she'll feel more welcome when she comes back or he comes back. I think that's a very important part of how I create, is allowing her to leave and allowing her to come back whenever she needs to. So this is a baby wipe that I'm going through, and I'm just smoothing everything out, smoothing those hard lines that I see, making everything a little bit softer. And then I take my Stabilo pencil, which is black, and all I'm doing is highlighting the outlines of all of the birds. And then I'll take my watercolor brush, a very, very fine tipped watercolor brush, and I'm even dabbing off the drips of moisture onto a wet wipe, because I don't want this to get to be a blurred edge. I want it to be a firm edge. And so I'm going to just use this very, just a moist brush rather than a wet brush, and that's how I'm going to activate the Stabilo pencil. And the Stabilo, once it's activated, is supposed to be permanent as well, I think. That's how it seems to be when I test it on my pages. And so once again, I just go through and wash the birds wherever there was an abundance of blue on them. So here's my fine tip paintbrush and my very little amount of water, and I'm just going through and going over those lines and activating the Stabilo pencil. I think I love my Stabilo pencil. That's one of the tools that I'm not sure that I could live without at this point, because every time that I go for a defining line, I always say, okay, well, let's use a Pitt pen, but Pitt pen has been frustrating me quite a bit when it comes to working on pages that have tooth, or working on pages that don't really have tooth, that are a smooth acrylic paint base. I'm finding that I have to fight with my pen work, no matter what pen I'm using. So having the Stabilo come into my life has kind of solved all those problems, because I don't have to worry so much about that it's not going to work on that medium, because I know that it will. So here I'm adding in all my quotes. This first one says, at first glance it may appear too hard. Look again, always look again. And I'm not sure who that came from, so that one's anonymous. The next one says, doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. And that's once again anonymous. And the third one I also have as anonymous, because when I gathered it from Pinterest, it didn't have a name attached to it. And it says, the first step to getting what you want is having the courage to get rid of what you don't. And that kind of spoke to me because right now I'm sorting through my workshop. I actually had closed down my workshop for my children's spring break so that I could be at home with them and cleaning out my workshop at the same time. So that really spoke to me, to have the courage to get rid of the things I don't need. Next thing I'm going to do is grab this bee, and I think it's from Stampin' Up, but I felt like I just needed a third element because I had the small sparrow, I had the big sparrow, and I just felt like I needed that, like, one more thing. Maybe I didn't. I always kind of go overboard. That's kind of my trait, isn't it? Going a little bit overboard. So then I thought, you know, it's really weird for these note pages to just be hanging out. So I'm going to make it a mixed media page, and I'm going to use some washi tape to look like I'm gluing down the corners of these pages to my project. And I really, really loved how that came out. And then I got to looking at it thinking, you know, it's okay to leave it as open sky and I don't have to create a border, but you know, with the music notes kind of shining through here and there, and with the music notes being such a big part of the sparrows, I decided that it would be really good if I made a border of music notes just to draw the eye back into the central portion of the page. And so that's what I do. I took a roll of washi tape that had a double row of music notes on it, and I ripped the music notes apart so that I would have a very thin line of washi tape, and then that's what I used. I threw that all on there, and then I was set all the way across, which I fought with the washi tape just a little bit, I think. You know, before mixed media, I never liked washi tape because I don't view washi tape as something that works for scrapbooking, because it's not really a permanent, dependable adhesive. So I really don't often use it in scrapbooking or card making or anything like that. It's more, once I got into mixed media, then I actually started loving washi tape. So here is the finished product, the close-ups. My 3 quotes on my page, the layers of the birds and the tape and everything like that. And I love those birds. I love the napkins. I'm going to have to go find more of those napkins. But thank you for joining me in finishing an unfinished Thursday.